All right. It says that we are live. I am just going to do double check one of my feeds to make sure the live is showing up. And welcome everybody. Um, Let me see. I think you can see. Alrighty, there you go. So welcome everybody to Burnout Hiding in Plain Sight. Looks like it's working the way it's supposed to. I'm just going to double check. Yes, it's working. And check one more feed to make sure it's there. I hope you're having a great Wednesday. Let's see. Right. Okay, looks like, let's see, I'm just gonna check the sound. Looks like it's going. All right. So we are going to trust that the technology is doing what it is supposed to do and get into this topic for today. So welcome again, everybody, to Burnout Hiding in Plain Sight. And today we're talking about when things seem fine on the outside, but inside you're not fine. So I'll just talk a little bit about what I like to do each time I come to one of these sessions is to really think about the ways that patterns or habits or policies and procedures can lead us down the path toward burnout when we're really not wanting to go there. And sometimes these things happen in these very unexpected ways. It's right there in front of us, but it's not right there in front of us. That's why I say hiding in plain sight. It's like when you walk up to one of those illusion pictures in the mall and you're trying to find the dolphins and everybody sees the dolphins, but you don't quite see the dolphins. It's similar to that. Burnout can be that way, particularly when you have a situation where someone just sort of even expects that, work is supposed to be hard. It's going to be challenging. And so they don't even notice that they're going down this path toward burnout, right? But it's not just the individual level that we see challenges that can lead to burnout among individuals, but we can see shifting or policies and practices that happen in organizations can also encourage this movement toward burnout. Today, we're focusing on this whole idea of I said I'm fine, people think I'm fine, but I'm not fine. And for me, this represents one of the ways that productivity gets disconnected from well-being. Because often we just think of if the person is productive, then they have to be well, right? Who could do this work without being well? And I guarantee you there are people who could tell you, in addition to me, that a productive person is not always a well person. So when you see somebody doing and getting things done, it doesn't always mean that inside they're feeling fine. So how might that look, right? I remember a colleague told me about discovering that one of her employees, right? She's a management level person, and she discovered that this person was sending her emails in the middle of the night. And eventually she learned that the person was literally at the office past midnight and sometimes sleeping on the floor getting work done. When we think of productivity as only getting things done, it's very easy to blur the lines between doing things and overdoing things. So, and in fact, as I said, people often think that that's just the way it's supposed to be. And that's one of the ways burnout can slip up on people, because they say, well, isn't this how it's supposed to be? Aren't I supposed to be rushing around? Isn't it supposed to be challenging? Isn't it supposed to be hard? Doesn't everybody feel this way? So when that happens, right, then it's easy for us to start moving in that direction towards burnout and chronic stress and exhaustion. That's challenging to come back from. There are some researchers that I really love. I really love their book. It's called Powered by Feel. And they spent, I don't know how long collecting this data, talking with people who were artists, physicians, surgeons, athletes, just people who were excelling at what they do. And they wanted to discover, so what is it that creates excellence, right? So excellence, right, is like, that's somebody who's really productive. They're really doing what they do, and they're doing it really well. But one of the things they discovered is that people will do what they have to do regardless of how they feel. And they call this a formula for mediocrity. And I've seen this with clients that, hey, they're, you know, my management gave me these different projects to do. I'm trying to get them done, and I can't get them all done. It's stressful for me, but I need to keep pushing because they have to be done. So they'll keep going, even though it feels as though they can't go anymore. Now, I'll tell you the good thing about that feeling that I can't go anymore is that somewhere that person's still connected to their inner compass. Something somewhere inside of you. Once you know inside you're feeling not fine, your compass is still working, right? When you truly burn out, you can lose touch with your compass, completely disconnect from your compass, right? So the person who keeps pushing and loses touch with their compass has really reached that place where we're going to have to recover and help them to reconnect with their own compass, right? Somebody who still has this awareness that something's not right inside still has some awareness of their compass. They still can say, wait a minute, I'm noticing. So we can just start to sort of tweak and say, well, what is it that's going on that's holding you here? So I'll tell you one of the things that happens that turns, that sort of desensitizes us to our own compass is that we start to get good at ignoring our own body signals. We get good at suppressing our emotions, telling the emotions they have to wait. I can't pay attention to them now. And then eventually, that sort of I don't feel good inside feeling keeps growing and growing and growing. However, everybody outside of your world might be saying to you, you are fine, right? You are doing well. You are a top achiever. This is one of the reasons that many coaches who work in organizations would encourage managers to pay attention to those people who produce the most, because they are often very likely to disconnect from their own inner compass and push themselves beyond the point that they need to push to get things done, right? So again, this is how productivity can get disconnected from well-being. Now, as you can imagine, some of that comes from, people go to a job that they love. Sometimes they're in love with the work they do. They want to do it well. They want to make an impact in it. And so they just start giving to it. But then maybe sometimes they also lose touch with this love they have for it. And they just get caught in the doing and doing and doing. And so they lose the sense of value of it, and they can, right, get in this pattern of, I look fine on the outside, but inside I'm not fine. The other way I've seen like that people can get caught in this pattern is when they're in an unsafe work environment. So let's just say you're in an environment where you feel you're being judged, not just by your skills, your expertise, what you bring to the work, but you're also being judged by things that are not your. Let me see, somebody made a comment. I'm just going to check and see if I can see it over here. Yes, okay. Yes, okay. Hi, thank you for joining me. It's nice to see you. All right, I just want to make sure I wasn't missing somebody's question. Thanks, it's nice to see you. So, so how do we get to this pattern, right, of doing things regardless of how we feel, right? As I said, that Clausen and Newberg in the book Power by Feel, they actually call this a formula for mediocrity. Because if you don't pay attention to your feelings, right, that's actually one of the marks of excellence, is that the person who does excel actually pays attention to how they feel and how they're relating to the work and how they're feeling the give and take between them and their work, right? So if you lose that sense, right, then you end up doing a mediocre job, which is not what anybody wants. Because most people, as I just mentioned, like their work. They want to do a good job. And then I started to speak about like in the environments where you feel unsafe. So you feel like you have to go the extra mile because if you don't give more, you won't be recognized, right? And this is, I will tell you, growing up Black in the South, one of the things my elders used to say was that if they wanted a job when they were, you know, at the point of getting a job and they wanted to get a job, if it job required a high school diploma, they would have to get a college degree in order to get that same job that somebody who of another race could get without a college degree, right? So you may have that history and that awareness, and you may still be living some of that in your own experience where you're being judged by people who are not just paying attention to your skills or your expertise, but they're also paying attention to and judging you based on some stereotype that doesn't even apply to you. So you push harder and you do well on the outside, you overgive, you over deliver, right? I've heard women even tell me this, I over deliver so that I won't be judged. I won't put the person who looks like me, the next person that comes along who looks like me will be in a better position than me. Oftentimes it's what people feel. So they push a little hard. Sometimes people can get caught in this pattern because they've just, their way of coping is to stuff it down, to hold it. And oftentimes, even when they manage a challenging situation, they never quite rest. They're always like in a hyper alert state. So that hyper alert person is always thinking they got to do something more. They got to give more. They got to give more. That's individual things that can get us to this pattern. But also there are organizational things that can get us to this pattern of we look good on the outside, but inside we are not feeling fine. So I'll tell you, one of the best examples I have is working with clients who are in huge systems that are like big bureaucracies, and they're high demand kind of environments. So they got project after project, and they're trying to get them through, and there are these layers of approval that have to happen. And things get bogged down in the layers. There's a timeline that they're trying to meet. The layers of approval are not cooperating. And so they're frustrated, and their managers are not always sympathetic to the fact that the system itself is slowing down the work. So sometimes the systems, right, that we exist in create this space where we are trying and going harder than we need to because the system itself is just not working. There's no way to fast track a thing, right? It doesn't need all those layers. So sometimes systems really need to change so that people can work with a bit more ease. If you don't feel safe in your organization, you might, again, be one of those people who's fine on the outside, but inside you don't feel fine. So you may have reached a point where you actually recognize, like, I could use some support with this project, but my manager is not that supportive of me. I don't feel much community here. And when I usually ask people for support, I don't have colleagues, right? So that kind of lack, those are actually some of the common organizational factors that are associated with burnout: lack of community and lack of managerial or organizational support. But you can see how if somebody's in that environment and they still want to do a really good job, and maybe they don't have another job to go to right away, this was the best choice for them in that moment, and they're doing their best to try to manage it. But all of those just doing your best to try to manage it, that can last for a while, but eventually you stay in that too long, your nervous system is just going to be like triggered and overreacting, or over aroused is really more what I'm looking for, right? It's just going to be over aroused all the time, and you're going to always be kind of pushing intense, right? So my commitment is, once we talk about, right, all of these things that are factors that guide us to why we see this problem, then we also look at the other side. How do these things teach us what we need to do? So if as an individual, what happens is we feel unsafe, or we feel like we don't manage stress well, and somehow we've lost maybe touch with what the work really means to us, then we can start to take a step back and start thinking about how do we help ourselves readjust, right? How do we, and I like small steps. I like people to think of what is the smallest step I could take that would make a difference for me. And I'm going to make one suggestion today that I think is something that could be applied for an individual or an organization. Is to shift your definition of what it means to be productive. Because if you're caught in the productivity means I get all the things done and I get them done on time, even if I'm sleeping on the floor at the office, even if I leave the office after midnight and I'm back at the office again by 7, all of those things, right? If you believe that's the way and that's the only way, right? That's your definition of productivity, then it's disconnected from well-being already. So my suggestion is to start first just expanding what it means to be productive. And maybe that part of what it means to be productive is not just that you do the things, but you also do them in a way that allows you to feel well, that a way that actually uses your energy cycle. So if you are a person who works long hours, so schedule some breaks. Just start to make taking a break a part of the way you understand productivity. So it's the shifting productivity and maybe considering to think of, rather than I'm being productive, I'm doing the things, I'm being effective at doing the work I love. So that's like, I think the overall idea is that part of what I think is needed for us as individuals and organizations is to just shift the way we start to think about productivity and include rest and recovery as a part of this process of being effective in the workplace. If you're somebody who feels like you're disconnected from your inner compass, I can make one suggestion for you today that, or if you know you don't feel quite fine inside, I think this could work for you as well. Is to just think about what that I'm not fine feeling is telling you. And I like to just use a question to help us with these kinds of insights. So I would suggest you say to yourself, what am I asking of myself? Like if you were to just look at the things you accomplished over the last 2 to 3 days, and I don't mean just at work. So maybe you cooked, maybe you went to the grocery store, maybe you went to the gym, maybe you had to take your kids to soccer, maybe you did something for one of your elder parents, or you helped out a neighbor, you did a community project. What were the things you did over like a 2 to 3 day period? And I would just ask you to look at those things and say, what am I asking of myself? What am I asking of myself with this list of things? And as you look at that list of things and begin to think of what is my body? What do I need my body to be able to do to actually accomplish these things? What do I need emotionally? What do I need mentally? Right? Where is the fulfillment coming in this list of things that I'm doing? That one question can start to get you to that one shift that you might make to help you get closer to an expanded definition of productivity, one that moves you more towards feeling effective. Because when you're not feeling fine inside, you don't feel effective. You got it done, but you don't feel like it really went well. And you're actually probably still waiting for something to fall apart. So what am I asking of myself can get you to the point of saying, what does the self need, right? What do you need to be more effective, to feel more effective? Not do more, but to feel more effective. Because you don't feel effective or productive when you're in that space of things look good on the outside, but inside, I'm not fine. And I think for organizations, there's somebody who made a comment on the event page. And one of the things that she pointed out was that sometimes people ask if you're fine, but they don't really want to know if you're fine or not. So we often encourage managers, burnout coaches encourage managers to check on like people who are very productive, right? Because sometimes they can go a little bit too far and not take care of themselves. And I would like to say that sometimes it's challenging for some managers to do that. Some do it in a more like, okay, how you doing? Because, right? And you don't want to go at it that way. And I think that was her concern, was that people sort of do it in a sort of perfunctory way. And then some people are a little bit hesitant to ask because they're not sure about what are the resources they have available. So as a manager who is watching this person who may look fine on the outside, but not feel fine inside, one of the things is to first know what you have available that you can offer to support your team members to get things done. And then I think the other is to really, when you do approach someone, because you want to have that relationship with a person where they can let you know when they need a little more support or they need a little extended time, or they can pass off a part of the project that somebody else is better at. You want to go to them with that sort of open curiosity that I'm not sure where they are right now, but I respect wherever they are. And if they're saying that they need some support, let me figure out how I can give that to them. But if you know your resources, that'll be an easier conversation to have. How can I support you? I think is one of the great questions to ask. Sometimes asking how you are, how are you? People say they're fine, and we'll say okay. But asking how can I support you may get them to think a little more deeply about where they are and what they might need. And then always being able to say to them would let me know if there's something you need. I would also, as a manager, encourage you as a manager just to encourage that expanded definition of productivity that includes people doing some rest and recovery. Okay, I've worked for 60 minutes straight. I'm just going to stand up. Like for me, sometimes I just to stand up and walk. Like if I'm at one of my offices, I'll walk the hall, right? Sometimes that somebody gets up and they do some jumping jacks or they dance, they have a dance break. So normalizing those kinds of breaks in your setting can help with this, people being so productive, looking productive on the outside, but inside they're not fine. That can help sort of keep that productivity and wellness more working as a team. And that's our goal, is to have productivity and well-being become a team, that there's not that gap between being productive and well-being. But more, we're now saying these are a team that help us to be effective in our work. I'm going to just check and see if anybody had a comment. Okay. All right, everything looks pretty good. All right, checking one more. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining me today. I'll be back in a couple of weeks, and I'll see you then.